Okay, now we're going.
Because it's just I think that's what she's saying, like, you have it pointed at them, right? Like at the TV.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah.
Can you hear us now?
Oh. Okay, great. So I'm just joining to kind of answer any product functionality / implementation related questions, and Alestra is, I know this is more of Alestra's follow-up for pedagogical support. But I know naturally as you're implementing, you're on your first year of using Amplify Science, there's a lot of kind of things outside of pedagogy that we can address on this call as well. So thank you so much for sharing the document with all your questions. I did kind of have the product team look at it and confirm a couple things with other people on the team before coming to you. So, and I've done my best to kind of gather responses, or I may be asking for more follow-up questions. Like I have some follow-up questions. So I don't know, Alestra, how you wanted to kind of take this time, if you just wanted to run through the doc, or if Bobby, you wanted to maybe, if you wanted to address something else right away.
I'll just say, first of all, let's see, Alestra, you're normally in Northern California, and Claudia, you're normally in New York City, right?
Yeah, I know. And yeah, so we're together today. I'm in New York with Claudia.
Okay,
yeah,
great.
This is our Brooklyn office.
Okay, great. Okay. I'm glad you're here, and yeah, I hope most of the time I'm going to shut up and let the teachers ask you about questions and issues that they are having. And I'm seeing video very well on my laptop, and the streaming to the television is a little behind. So we're not quite, so what teachers are seeing of you on the television isn't quite lining up with what I'm seeing, I think, the live. So there's a little bit of hesitation between things there. The other thing was I definitely do want to go through the questions that were on the document that we shared, and the things that were there. I guess what I would say is, Alestra, you've seen those questions that were there, and if you want to just start with some of the questions that were answered there, and as teachers here want to ask questions, and we'll just have this question and answer session, and try to do as much troubleshooting as we can. So I would say, Alestra, if you want to start us off with your thoughts from the questions we gave you, and we'll go from there.
Or for you, Claudia? Yeah, okay, so I'm going to start with just the first question about rubrics. And the rubrics that we provide are the ones for the end of the unit assessments. There are also some guidelines for critical junctures and for the pre-unit. So all of those assessments will have rubrics provided for the teachers. And that's so that you can progression your students are at. The multiple choice items will be auto-scored, so you can see that in your reporting app. But the teachers will need to use the rubrics for the written responses. So I'll pause there to see if there are any questions.
So are those just the packets then that are, like, I know today I started to grade, I'm in metabolism, for example, and with my 7th graders, and I was going over the pre-assessment data. I'm like, where's the rubric? So I got digging, and then so there is I guess it's under lesson 1.1. I'm on lesson 1.2. So it would be.
Can you speak close to the mic? Sorry.
That's okay. Can you hear me better now?
So I'm hearing you're in metabolism.
Mm-hmm. So it would be like, I'm in chapter 1, lesson 1.1. It says the metide. So there'll be one of those types of packets for every critical juncture and end of unit assessment.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
It'll be the same name, answer key and scoring guide.
Gotcha.
not be aware where to find it. Sometimes it's not so intuitive. It will be in the lesson that the assessment comes in, and it will be in the digital resources section.
I don't know, I turned my computer around. Are you guys able to see the teachers now with what you have, or?
Is he thinking I'm projecting?
Am I?
I don't know. Are you thinking that we're projecting, Bobby? Would you? I can.
Well, if you don't want to, that's fine. No, that's fine. I thought maybe you were.
Oh,
No?
okay. Oh, no, I wasn't projecting anything. I
Okay.
just was, for each unit, it's the same. In the digital resources section is where the answering key scoring guide will be located, and it will be in the pre-unit assessment lesson, as well as the critical juncture assessment, as well as the end of the unit assessment. We'll all have that rubric there. Now, something else you can use to formatively assess your students would require you constructing your own rubrics around that, but if you also wanted to use, the on-the-fly assessments as formative assessment opportunities as you move along, it does give you a look for. So the look for would be, let's say 3 out of 3 on a rubric.
Mm-hmm.
Another way that you could also formulate a rubric is by using the possible responses tab. Whenever there's a written assignment, there'll be a possible responses, and that will also give you the statement or the writing or the explanation that would be complete at that point in the unit. So sort of like an answer key.
Awesome, thank you. Because I know a couple of us are trying to do standard-based grading, and we were thinking about how could we hone in on a specific skill.
Okay, so if we're okay to move on, I can go to the next question, which is the grade book. So for the grade book, if there is a question in a green check, for example, a green and a check, the student answered that correctly. If there's a red X, then that indicates that the student selected an incorrect response. A yellow check is the correct response that the student should have checked but did not. So it lets you know if you're looking at an incorrect response, what should they have answered instead.
Where's that at?
I'll pause there to see if there are any questions or if you need a little clarification on that. Okay, are we good?
I think that makes sense.
Greens, and so that's the coding there. And then to download an article. So the articles can be downloaded onto a device, and that's why you get that that prompt that says, go ahead and put in 4, type in 4 numbers, or it's an access code. I usually tell teachers, make it very simple, something that your students will use throughout the year, and everyone can have the same code. For example, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 2, 2, 2. A code that can be very, easily memorized by students. And so when they put in that code, they can then save that. And I see Claudia's adding a little.
I joined from my laptop because we have a doc with answers that we've gathered on our end, Bobby, but because it was an internal kind of brainstorming doc, we didn't answer initially there, so I can kind of copy and paste into the chat so you can maybe add whatever more you're hearing here and you can put into your doc. Does that sound okay? Or with some resources there?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
So do they actually have to hit a button once they enter that code? Like I know when they open up the document separate from the actual Amplify platform, when it opens up in a new window, do they need to hit a button after they enter that code, or does entering the code automatically download it to the device?
I can test it out here, but I normally just go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I get in.
Okay.
are you saying, like, for example, do they need to hit return? I'm going to go ahead and test it out, but yeah, in the library, I normally just type in.
Yeah, I'm not really sure if I understand the question.
I think
They do have to find the article and download, like they do have to press download, and it does have to download complete.
Is there a way
So, like, I just went in, I got access to the library by putting in the code, and there's one button that says start reading, and it won't download to the device. The student can just scroll and read there live in real time, or they can click download, and it will save the file to their device.
okay.
Is there a way to change the code? Like we did this initially.
Yes. So I'm in the library, and when you go to, let's say I'm in a random article or a title, when you open that, at the top right you'll see a settings button. It's a little cogwheel, and at the very bottom it will say reset pin.
Say that again. No, I don't see that.
Can you repeat that one more time, please?
Of course. So if you're in an article, so you have to be inside of an article to see the actual the menu key at the top. At the far right of your screen, you'll see a settings icon. It looks like a cogwheel. If you click on that cogwheel, the very last option will say reset pin. And then I can click on that and I can put a new four-digit pin.
I just saw the download button in the library too, so that would be a good place for them to download as well.
And then that will actually pop up an orange button that will say submit, and I just submit, and it says success. You will be prompted to enter your PIN when browsing offline. If you'd like, I can give folks a moment to test that out.
Yes, please.
I'm hearing yes, they would like that.
Oh, continue reading.
Okay, I'll pause.
See this there? Oh, okay, yeah. That one. Scroll bottom.
No, I never made one, so I'm
create
assuming
ten.
you create, yeah, I'm assuming you create one then.
Oh, that's
You haven't
okay.
made
I
one.
put you 1, 2, 3, 4.
But that doesn't automatically
So that's how
download
they
it.
can download information.
But I wouldn't necessarily do that unless your kid doesn't have Wi-Fi. Yes, then you can go in, but like some people were saying like their kids automatically put a code in, they're like, oh, well, they didn't read the directions, and they just plopped in a code. But if you go to the library, that's where you download too, because when I clicked on the article, it's like if you go to like a digital library anyways, it just says like download or continue reading, and I'm assuming if you hit download, it just pulls it up, and then when they go in the library, it should be there.
You guys good to move on? All right, I think they're ready to move on.
Fantastic. Okay, so the next question about locking student assignments. At this time, the only things that you can lock for your students to deny them access are the assessments. That would be the critical juncture assessment and the end of the unit assessment. We don't have the possibility to lock any other written assignments or anything that students hand in, such as modeling tools, at this time.
So not the pre-assessment, but the post and the middle assessment?
Now, I just want to be sure everyone knows how to unlock the assessment. Is there anyone who's had trouble unlocking or locking an assessment?
I found out the hard way.
Has anyone had difficulty unlocking an assessment?
It's been pretty simple. I like it. And I like how you can select multiple students or deselect students. That's really awesome.
Okay, great. I'm glad that's working for you, and I do understand as a middle school teacher, sometimes you want to, hold them back a bit. They get a little anxious, excited. All right, so I'm going to move to our next question.
There was another.
Wait.
Excuse me one second.
Okay.
There was another question.
Oh, they pretty much answered it. It was about the pre-assessment. If you could unlock or lock the pre-assessment. Yes.
Yes. Same thing goes for all the assessments that you want to make sure that you have students not sharing ideas so that you can gauge where they are at those points in time.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so I am seeing that the next question is if someone can model a lesson in our classrooms. So speaking from experience, I have gone into classrooms to model a lesson start to finish at the middle school level. That is something that we can do. But what I will share for right now, because you're teaching it in the moment. So one aha after I had modeled a 45-minute lesson start to finish was that I moved quickly through the activities, and the ahas teachers were getting is that, I kept clarifying or going over the materials or reviewing the vocabulary, and so instead of an activity taking 10 minutes, it took me 15 to 20. And so what they observed was that I just kept moving, and that's because I knew, with the familiarity of the unit I had, that we were going to cycle back to that idea. They were going to hear that vocabulary again, that they were going to get another chance at bat with a particular idea. And I know the first time you're going through a unit, it's all new to the teacher as well, and so you might not realize that the students are going to come back to that idea. But I say what I really encourage teachers to do is to not expect mastery the first time, the second time that students are encountering an idea, to know that we have intentionally designed a cyclical process where students are going to be engaging with the same ideas. Maybe they're going to do it through a different modality. For example, maybe in the reading, they didn't quite capture the idea that, let's say, for example, we're talking about metabolism, the cells of the body need particular molecules. Well, when they go into maybe the modeling tool or the simulation, then they get the aha moment. So I'm not going to spend extra time going over the reading because they're going to get another opportunity in that chapter. Now, that said, what I would do, though, is when I get to a critical juncture and I look at the look for and how I can tailor my instruction, that's when I might take a little extra time to make sure that if students need an example, like, for example, a reteach moment, a review, it would be in that tailoring the instruction after that formative assessment. So I'm going to pause to see if there are any questions on that.
I think that makes sense why a lot of us are in different places, because some of us feel like, oh my gosh, like we need to talk about this way more, or we don't need to talk about it as much.
Or like you were saying before, the kids want to discuss it, and then sometimes they don't really want to talk, and then other times they talk a lot. So.
And what we could do, folks, Bobby, if it's okay with you, is I could say, let's touch base again in a few weeks and see, how that has worked for teachers. Really just taking on that challenge of let me just see if I can just pace myself with the suggested pacing. If I'm still feeling that my students are needing additional support throughout, or if I'm noticing that cyclical pattern. Does that sound like I want to?
I'm great for organizing something like this again. We'll have to talk about what would work best for teachers.
And Bobby, what I'm suggesting was maybe I just send you an email saying, maybe a Google Doc. How is it going for teachers, and they can share feedback, and we don't have to formalize a meeting like this, but we could definitely be in communication.
Wonderful.
I know everyone's busy.
Right.
Could there be an option of like having a video of you teaching that we could view and be able to see it? That way it doesn't have to be in person, but we could see a lesson being taught.
Isn't there one that we saw at one of the trainings, like when we did it virtually?
I don't know how authentic it would in person.
Yeah, but Bobby, I'm not sure. I was looking at the PD package that was purchased to see if there was another on-site left, because that is an option, like Alessia was saying. Or I've seen for her to model a lesson and maybe have a couple teachers step in. It's good to have examples. This is the first year that they're doing it, but I'm looking and you got 3 days. You have 3 full days, right?
I thought we had we had exhausted that. It is possible that maybe we could look into to purchasing an extra day of if possibly a Lester coming here. The other thing I was thinking of is a little bit more possible collaboration with some of our teachers who are feeling comfortable with it, seeing some who are struggling a little bit.
Yeah. That's really sort of leverage the teachers who are in their second year. I know when I went to the workshop, we sort of had the experts and the novice, and it was a very nice collaboration. I think that would be excellent.
The other question I had kind of related to that, if you might speak to for a moment. We have different schools with different schedules, and some of our teachers have a 50, 60-minute period, and others have a 80 or so minute period every other day. Any for those who don't see their students every day, but see them for an 80-minute or so period every other day, any suggestions with what you might have seen others that have had that kind of extended period, how to work with it?
Yes, do a block schedule that is longer than the 45-minute allotted time for one lesson. You can double up, and we do suggest that the teacher starts the second lesson with the warm-up, because it's a nice transition. It will be a nice sort of bridge from the previous lesson to the next lesson. And that can kind of also for students sort of be sort of like a mind break. Okay, let me gather thoughts. What did we just finish doing? Okay, let me now move into this next idea, building on what we had just completed. Because the activities are time-stamped, so you have, let's say, a lesson 2.3 has 4 activities. And lesson 2.4 has 5 activities. I could see cleaving the following lesson 2.4 and maybe not get into the very last activities, but then bringing that to your next day. What I'm trying to say is maybe you can't fit 2 45-minute lessons into one day of a block schedule, but maybe you can do one full lesson and parts of a follow-up lesson. That's one option. Another option teachers do is they do the homework in class. So the homework isn't fit into that 45-minute time frame. So they'll give their students an additional opportunity to do homework. And then in the teacher support notes, if you look at an activity and there are teacher support notes, sometimes there are notes called going further. It's nice to preview those before you even teach the unit. Find the going further notes and kind of keep a bank of them. Okay, here's when we sort of have extra time in a day. We're going to go ahead and do this extension. Oftentimes they're math extensions, which is a nice cross-curricular experience for the students. Sometimes they're just adding a different perspective, or maybe giving a little bit of a different context to maybe an investigation or the sim use. So I would look for the going further notes, and sometimes even the on-the-fly assessment can be a little more formalized, and that could also happen during the block day, where maybe the teacher asks the students to respond to a prompt that is just an oral prompt, but the students can respond in writing, have a conversation with their peers, share out, so extending in that way.
Great.
Some suggestions. I can and move on to the Eyes Up feature question. Oh, I'm sorry, we did not. Okay, so I'm sorry, I skipped over the grade book in progress. You know, I've actually been in workshops with teachers where they are the students and I am the teacher, and they hand in and it says in progress, and then a little bit later on in the day, then it's handed in. It's like a time lag. I've seen that happen. I don't know if that's what teachers are experiencing. I'll wait to hear if this is kind of what's happening, that time lag.
Does it eventually show up? Because do you ever see that? Is the work eventually populated in your grade book when students are submitting and handing in?
Yes, we were just saying that we need to hit refresh a lot, but I mean, because that's what we were just saying here. If we hit refresh, it comes up, but obviously it's not like instant.
I was gonna say, I just checked, I have 2 in progress, and I refreshed, and they definitely say.
Finish it then.
So that's what it is.
Yeah, and the kid has to hit hand in, and I've noticed a lot of students are not hitting hand in, and if they don't hit hand in, but the thing that's nice about the in progress is even though they haven't handed it in, now sometimes I've noticed if you're clicking down like through the students' responses, it won't show up, but if you go back and click on the in progress, you can still see what they started, especially if it's a written response.
Yeah, and they actually can start where they left off as well, so that's nice. I have heard teachers say that they will have to remind their students, now make sure you hand in your work. So if you see a student in progress, and even after you refresh, it's still in progress, you might need to do a verbal reminder. So that's one way to troubleshoot. Is it a time lag? Is it a refresh issue? Or is it that the student just did not hand in their work?
I like the idea of the update button too, because I've been telling a lot of my kids, even if you don't finish, hit hand in, and then if you want to go back and make changes later, just hit update. And then I'll be able to see exactly what you did.
But you won't
And now
know
that the grade book has a timestamp, you'll be able to see, the last time that they made any updates.
I would like, Donna had some response to that. What you did what?
So if a student isn't finished, and she said she tells them to hand it in anyway, and then they update later, you have no notification that they changed their answer or updated it.
Yeah, that's correct. Right now, unfortunately, you're not getting like a ping or a message in your email saying, hey, someone updated it. So you're right, that's a little bit of an enhancement that we've heard before. With the timestamps though, I think the hope is that helps you when you look at the grade book and you're like, oh, someone submitted something yesterday and class was 2 days ago, so this must mean that it's updated. I know that's not the perfect, because that should kind of help gauge if a student has updated their work.
Well, we were also discussing too, like I know in the past when we used Google Classroom, like that would drive me crazy. Like I would grade everything, I wouldn't want to get 1,000 notifications anyways. So I would just tell my kids, write me a note and put it in my turn-in basket. When you turn something in, hey, you need to grade this now because I turned it in late. And you say you have a form. I would love to see that that away. Because I think
you
that
have
just
to do the chapter, the lesson, the activity.
Ooh.
So it makes them put it all down there, so I know to look. And I say I have 100 and some students. I don't have time to search
go back
for
and grade it 6 times.
So it puts it in their court that they have to do it.
That's awesome.
Thank you for that feedback. Great. Okay, so I think we're moving on to the next question, which is the Eyes Up feature. And I don't know, Claudia, if you can speak to maybe the work around, like maybe checking about the whitelisting.
So Eyes Up should, so I'm sending you, Bobby, right now in the chat an updated whitelist. So I visited a school last week where Eyes Up wasn't working at all, but it was an easy fix. It was a whitelist issue. So I just sent you the latest whitelist. If you could kind of click on it as a validator, all of the URLs have been extracted.
Claudia, could I have you email me those, the updated whitelist and other things, because we're using my computer to project. I'm afraid if I go in, we're gonna lose it.
Sure, I'll just send it to you in an email. It's in the chat, but I'll go ahead and send it to you in an email if you need to access it from a different device. I've dubbed for, I want to say for 80% of our district partners has been fixed. I know that it wasn't that student dashboard, including start class, and ISUP wasn't always responding or it wasn't pulling everyone in. So I have heard positive things from the field that it's now working. And like I said last week, it was the whitelist validator that I quickly changed that for a school where they couldn't use ISUP at all. So I'm hoping that will fix it across the district as well. Along with that, I'll go ahead and kind of go into what is the purpose of starting class except to say ISUP. So, like I said, start class should be working now. Starting class does a couple of things. Most importantly, I think, especially for the younger students who are new, when you start class, it brings students to the lesson landing page, right, the lesson brief, for which the class has been started. So this saves some teachers some instruction around, hey, travel to this unit and this subunit and this, this chapter, and it just kind of, instead of you having to give all those directions, when you start class, the students will land right onto the lesson. And I have seen it where, they might have to refresh, or if they're not on the Amplify curriculum tab and they're like doing something else in a different tab, it's not going to redirect them, right? So they do have to be on Amplify, and starting class will take them to the lesson of the day. Something also to highlight that there has been some enhanced functionalities with Start Class as they were fixing and addressing the known issues. Now the new Start Class also displays kind of the student dashboard. It lets you know which activity the student is on. So kind of for classroom management, you can say, oh, I know that Abby's still on the vocabulary, activity, and then, we should be on the writing activity. And so you can kind of go to that page and manage, see where your students are from, within that lesson. You also will see the status of their work in that activity. It indicates if the student is no longer in the lesson, has wandered off somewhere else, or maybe is in a different tab. So those are new things that you should not be able to see from that kind of student dashboard page, is what I call it, but it's where that start class is and that ISUP is. Have you noticed any of those enhancements?
So the last time I was here at CES, I could get into where it would let me actually change it to start class or end class or eyes up. But then when I went back to my school, it wouldn't let me do it. And I don't know why the location.
It had a whitelist issue. When you say it wouldn't let you do it wouldn't let you click on it?
Right,
or was it available?
I couldn't click on it, I couldn't change anything, I couldn't do anything.
Like you didn't even have this button.
But you were able to do it in a different setting?
Yes. So like that.
Okay, yeah, so that could be the whitelist. I just sent it to Bobby out.
Okay.
It's on its way, so he could easily run the validator and say, oh, I noticed that there's a number of things that we need to, validate.
So it won't show up that yours.
So it'll show up, but I can't do that. I can't change anything. Like, this will let me do eyes up here, but it won't let me when I go back to my school, or at least it wouldn't.
To start a class to do a poll. Like I noticed some things have a poll.
What time it happened. Okay. Yeah, well, I can see what I have to. Exactly. Yeah, Jim, if it is.
So because we can't see you, we're not really able to get some talk within the group, but I did hear a poll question. You do have to have class started in order for it to pull in the poll results.
Okay.
For polling results?
Yeah. Yeah, you have to have class, because I've done a poll, a couple already.
I was pretty excited when it finally came up and
I think my kids
that's
like
pretty
that too,
interesting.
yeah.
Well, I used to do poll everywhere, but the fact that you don't even have to spend the time typing it in now, it's already
there for you.
Does it save the results of the poll? Because I tried it and I couldn't find, I wanted to go back to it the next day and refer to the poll. Oh, I guess somebody knows.
Okay. Do you remember what lesson it was in?
Oh.
2.
It would have been 2.1 or 2.
Okay. There's usually 1.
The microbiome.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I don't have microbiome.
Oh, okay. But here, I'll show you. Okay. Because there was a poll. Here's the read lecture. Maybe it's in 2.2.
When you went into like instructional view, it gave you the option to click on the poll.
Right there. Okay. Look,
So it saved it. Okay, because I went back in, I must have gone into something else that, okay.
So where are the results?
Moving on.
they're at the top of the screen, right here. Right there. Yeah.
Kind of like the
It's at
on
the top of
version
that
stuff.
activity. It looks like a bar graph. It's at the top of whatever activity has the poll.
Start because
Yeah.
if you're not doing that regularly and you want to
Yeah,
get that
I
data.
because I tried to do the poll without it and you can't. The kids knew too when I started the class because it sort of like glitched, made them like they weren't with me. You know, they
It jumped.
changed. Yeah, it changed it for them. So like whoa. I knew they were on task.
I think we're good on that one, right?
Okay, so the next question is about the articles not loading from the link within the student or the teacher's platform. And what you can do, there is an alternate way to get into the library, which is in the global navigation menu. There is an icon with a line illustration of a book, and that also will take students or the teacher to the library. Another thing is you can try to refresh and then try the link again. So those are two workarounds if you have trouble getting into the library from a link.
Can you
global-
say that again, please?
yeah.
Yeah, where's the global?
Yeah, I just wanted to gather some more. Alessia was pointing to a workaround accessing the article. So number 9 says sometimes articles won't load. So I guess for me as someone from like is this happening from the link embedded within the instructional guide, or is this happening from the student view when they have to read the article? Like, give me just a couple examples of when this is happening, and is this happening like 0.5% of the time? Is it happening just to a couple of students in class, or every student experiences where an article just simply won't load?
When I've experienced it, for example, it would have where the students could view it, and then there would be their like question on the side. But if they wanted to click it so they could just focus on the article itself, when they clicked on the link, the article would not load. So it wasn't the end of the world because they could still view the article and they just had to scroll through it on the side with the question there, which I personally was like, that's probably better, guys, because you can refer back to the question and the text at the same time. And it wasn't every single student though. It was like maybe 3 out of 25 kids could not access the article. I've also had problems where they went to listen to it, and some kids can listen to it, and others it's like an awful, terrible sound, and it doesn't matter if I change out the headphones or what. So I don't know if it's just like, and I've had the kids restart and like close out of Amplify and start again, it still does it. So I don't know if it's just like an iPad issue, or if it's...
That is an issue that's come up spotted at places that I haven't been able to get an understanding of a pattern. I know it's happened at PICS, the sound, difficulty with the sound. Has it happened in Smithsburg too?
Not that I know of. I was going to say the text not loading piece, again, it's just like 2 kids out of the class. But when I go to their iPad and I look at it, they have so many tabs open that when I close some of those tabs down, then immediately it pops up.
Yeah, it
it's
will
like
load.
they have too much
Maybe
stuff
it's just
going on.
overloaded.
They do have to, because my kids will do the same thing.
I'm so glad you brought that up. It doesn't come up, I forget sometimes to mention that, and I had meant to tell you folks that when I was there with you. That is always a really helpful tip, is to ask students, how many tabs do you have open? Close everything except for Amplify. When we have large professional learning workshops with teachers, we do the same thing. It puts a strain if students are having, 20 tabs open. So that's also a really nice troubleshooting move. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so
Wait a minute,
go ahead.
since she's typing for people who aren't here, the other thing is, a lot of times Mondays, it seems like Mondays, their iPads have to resync to our school. They've had them home for the weekend, so a lot of times it's a matter of shut that whole thing down and start over. and then they are fine.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
again, it kind
Yeah.
of disrupts class and, but it's a necessary evil, like taking it back and forth, yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Is it because the students take devices home?
I think Lisa had a.
I do have one more question. Where is this global icon? The one.
Oh, so, if you're, is someone helping you there? It's at the top left, right to the left of the Amplify Science the home button.
Oh.
You said the three lines.
The hamburger.
Three horizontal lines.
Okay. I'm
It's on the
sorry.
top. What was?
I did know what that was.
That's
Thought there was
Different-
something
different-
else.
We
it's a
call it the
different term for
hamburger.
it.
Global navigation. Well, the kids, I've heard students call it the pancake or the hamburger. Hamburger, pancake. So yeah, but we call it the global navigation menu. Okay, so the next question I see here is about let's see, so there were some questions also from teachers who were not able to come with us today.
What about this? The reset. When you
Down
reset.
below.
There was another question there about what happens when you reset a lesson.
Oh, the reset. Thank you. Sorry, I'm skipping over. So where there's a section there for a teacher to put in notes. If there's a teacher notes section, or sometimes teachers, when they're modeling for their students, let's say I'm modeling the warm-up. I wanted to be really clear, and I projected the warm-up from my teacher account, and I type into the warm-up box. If I click reset, it will wipe all of that out.
Oh.
It'll bring the lesson back to default, where all of the areas are blank again.
I'm assuming.
So-
Hang on a second, we're gonna try this.
So if I hit,
Yeah, I can pause there.
so where would that be at?
Should it type reset or hit reset?
Hit reset.
Hit reset.
Reset lesson.
Where's that?
And the lesson brief, where you gotta go back to like the individual page with like the overview. So that was the warm-up, right?
Okay.
Oh, like the first page?
Well, it's still there.
Oh, I see it. Okay.
Maybe I didn't.
So that when your
In the.
second period class comes in, they don't see all of the work that it's almost like erasing your whiteboard.
Oh.
Yeah, it just starts you off fresh.
Maybe I
From the
should
very
hit.
beginning.
I hit reset. And
Then
it
we're
still
going
came
back
back.
everything we put in.
Like
Everything
if
first
you were
line.
to like actually type it in, or if you
Totally.
accidentally.
Good, so now I'm gonna type something else.
Well, or like there was a sort, and I had to model it.
Yeah, I did one.
And then the next class came in, and I was like, oh, dang it, I just dragged those all back over there. So I should have used the reset.
Okay, okay.
So when someone calls and says everything's gone, like, did you hit the reset?
Now, can you once you hit if you hit that, can you get back? If you hit the reset, can you unreset?
Can you save
Can you
that
reset the
lesson and then
reset?
reset it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So can you save what you're currently doing and then hit reset to go to another class?
I hit hand in and then I hit reset, and now what I put in there will not live. So maybe you just need to hand it in. Because it won't disappear. I can
I
delete
know,
it
I
out.
typed something and reset it, it didn't reset it either. I'll try again, but I don't know.
Teacher notes,
Did you
copy
hit
and
hand in?
paste to my teacher notes, but then I reset so my students don't see.
Yeah, it won't reset your teacher notes.
It will only reset the answers.
So one workaround, and so we're gonna, I think I'm conflating two things. I don't want to confuse you. So Bobby and whoever is taking notes there, what I mean is when a teacher takes notes or does a demonstration in the actual platform and wants to reset that, you click the reset. But let's say, for example, I want to remember what I wrote. Maybe I did a model explanation, and I really like the way it sounded, and I just want to cut and paste it each time for each of my sections. I could take that and I could save it in my lesson brief where it says teacher notes. I could save it there, and if I reset, it's not going to reset my notes. So I'm noticing the first part of this here, that we want to maybe delete. section for, the teacher notes. You can save things and they won't be reset when you click reset.
I guess it has to be under.
But anything else, that students would hand in, for example, that will all get reset for you. Yeah, there you go. So that's like maybe a place to store your models for students.
But that's going to get wiped every year, right?
It's gonna what?
Does that get wiped every year? Like, I know we talked about in the past, the student stuff won't carry over from like 6th grade to 7th grade. Is that something that will be wiped as our subscription ends and we renew it the following year?
You mean the
teacher
not for
notes?
the student work?
Well,
Teacher notes?
for
Yeah.
teacher notes.
says, see.
The teacher notes
Teacher
get wiped
notes?
clean.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, okay, all right, that's good.
I'm sorry, there's like a couple people near the mic, and since we can't see much, I'm not really sure. Are you referring to the teacher notes?
Yes, do they get wiped
teach-
cleaned every year?
So the teacher notes do not transfer from year to year at this time. So anything that you would put in there now will, because we're going to be rostering with the new enrollment, and it will be that information will not transfer at this time.
I wonder if you could even like print it out. Take a screenshot?
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Okay, before I move on to the questions down below, are there any questions on anything that we've gone over, any clarity needed?
Anybody else have any other questions of your own that you brought here that weren't actually on the document that you wanted to address? Okay, I guess I'm hearing we're ready to move on.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the 6th grade questions about scoring the work, and I think we did talk about this a little bit. It was just like the time lag or the refresh in the grade book is what I'm assuming. So that maybe just we could share out the answer from number 6 and also the number, I would say the answer to number 6 really addresses that. The teacher-centered. Okay, this is something I feel is a bit of it can be a misconception, and I'll explain why. When I talked with Jackie Barber from the Lawrence Hall of Science, she said, if there's anything I could do to revise, I would add a little note at the beginning of each lesson that says, here are some suggestions. Because really all of the teacher talk, every single speech bubble is suggested language. We don't anticipate, and I actually don't think it's actually feasible for every lesson. If I were to read every single teacher bubble word for word, that I would have the time in that 10 minutes to do so. But it's there for the teachers to understand the ways in which we can use this rich academic vocabulary so that the students are hearing it. So it's part of our multimodal approach multiple times before we expect them to actually start producing this language. So it's a very structured way of saying things, but you know your kids best. You'll know how to frame it and to incorporate that academic language. What I do when I'm doing a model lesson, so here you go, for example, I read the bold print. I read every bold step by step to get my head around, like, okay, what is the beginning, middle, end of this one activity? What are those main points? And then I pick and choose which of the language frames I'm going to use. I like, and this is just me, but I actually like having a paper teacher guide. That's just my style. Because I like to highlight specifically what I'm going to say and not make note of what I'm not going to say. That helps me sort of frame kind of what is the most essential language to be using and what are the most essential things to be pointing out to my students. For example, sometimes a teacher has a suggestion of 6 questions to ask the students, and they usually increase in complexity And you as the teacher know my students don't need 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to go down to those more complex questions because my students are here right now. So that's one thing I would say, teachers, when they say, that this is very teacher-led, really the intent is to let the students go, to figure things out, bring everyone together, and have a conversation. So another thing that teachers interpret is it's going to be the teacher asks a question, one student raises their hand and gives the answer. Those brackets, that like suggested student response. It's really not intended to be a one-on-one in that way. This is sort of a teacher can ask the question, you can have your students turn and talk, you can do a thought swap, you can have them journal, you could have them do it as a ticket out the door. There's lots of ways to do it to make it engaging, so you really are jumping off the stage as the teacher and really letting the students lead that. So I just want to point that out that though I can see why it would be interpreted that way, it really is not the intent. And I'll pause there to see if there's any clarifying questions.
I have something I've said in a number of places already, is that as a teacher, you cannot turn on Amplify and turn yourself off. You're still the main person responsible for the instruction, and Amplify is a great tool, but like any tool, it's only as good as the person using it. And so when we take the great tools that we have in Amplify and put our own personality and understanding our own students and everything in it, yeah, it's very student-centered. It's not teacher-centered.
Thank you, Bobby. Okay, so prep time. One big key I'm gonna to give you folks, because I do understand there are some lessons with a lot of preparation, and there are some lessons with very minimal preparation. So if you go to in the unit overview, the document is called, and I want to make sure I say exactly the right name. It's called Materials and Preparation. There are several tables provided to you. If you scroll down beyond, it'll let you know what material is used in what lesson. Scroll past all of that until you get to the part that says Preparation at a Glance. What it will do is it will tell you lesson by lesson how much prep time we anticipate. And teachers gave us in field tests, they gave us feedback. If we said it took 10 minutes prep and they said, no way, that took 20, then we revised it. So this has been teacher tested. Again, I was always a slow prepper. It took me forever to prep. So it depends, it really does vary teacher to teacher, but this has been tested by middle school teachers, hundreds of middle school teachers. So what I'm noticing, I'm in metabolism. In the first 3 lessons, there's a 10-minute prep, a 10-minute prep, and a 15-minute prep. But the first lesson of Chapter 2 has a 45-minute preparation. So as a teacher, I want to make sure I'm looking at my roadmap, kind of decide what my week's going to look like. Maybe that 45-minute prep. If I have like a designated prep time, I'm going to go to prepping for this one lesson. So you can have a little bit advance notice of what are the prep heavy days and what are the prep light days.
Sarah, I'm sorry, but Sarah had a comment here.
I was just saying, like, for that particular one, because I know my one coworker, she teaches 7th grade too. Like, I think people have to realize too, not knocking the other teachers, but like that is a particular activity that the kids are doing that's basically like a game. Obviously, if you have to run around and get the materials for the game and set up the room for that, that's obviously going to take way longer than if you're just glancing over your script, so to say, and getting your cards out. So I think people have to take that in consideration too, because I also know, like, my counterpart, she was like, oh my God, I have to memorize all this. And I'm like, please don't memorize all 30 pages of the teacher's manual. I'm like, just kind of pull it up and go with it and take it as you go and learn and then do better with the next group that comes in. Like, I think people need to realize that.
I would agree with you that, when we think about that investment in that time for the students to have a highly engaging activity,
sometimes it can kind of make us feel a little bit better about the 45 minutes we're spending getting all those game parts ready. But yeah, definitely, it's for me, it's worth the time.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I know that for teachers it's difficult because it's going to vary day to day. So I would just suggest looking at it over several days, so that you're not surprised one day that, oh my gosh, I have 45 minutes of prep for tomorrow. That can also help kind of alleviate some of
That's why I make that little list.
the frustration around how much prep you have.
Well, when this has been brought up with myself and some other coworkers, they had focused more on, we want to make this our lesson and not scripted, and make this very engaging for the kids and enter in some of these other little things that would make it fun. That, I think, is what's causing the prep time for us to go up, is that we need to get to know the Amplify lesson and know how that works. But in addition to that, we almost have to rewrite it in order to have a lesson that the kids are really engaged in. And I think that might be where some of this prep time, you're really double doing it. And I don't know how to get around that.
And I think people have to realize, too, that the payoff is going to be, this is year one. We're just getting used to the program. As time goes on, next year, now we're going to have a real good understanding of Amplify, because we've already did it once, and we'll know what things do we need to supplement, what things do we need to, I don't want to say rush through, but just kind of skim over with our kids, because they already have those skill sets coming in. So I think people just need to remind themselves, this is year one. Don't beat yourself up. Yeah, don't beat yourself up so
We
much.
get impatient.
Most of us have just finished the launcher unit and are just starting our first unit.
Almost.
Sorry about that, folks. Year one's always the hardest with a new curriculum. You're going to, you're going to be able to, when you come around to the same unit for the second time, know, what you can taper, what you can condense, what you can omit, what you might want to, give a little bit more time for. All of those things will be easier year two. So I definitely recognize that as the challenge of the first year of implementation. I'm going to skip over the model lesson. We talked about that. And I'm going to move to the question about fitting 135 lessons into 90 days of the science year. And I'm also wondering, just to clarify, is that those 90 science days, do those include block schedules? Because we talked a little bit about workarounds with that.
Right, yes, we have 180 instructional days, and those that are saying 90 days are our schools that are on a block schedule that have essentially an 80-minute period every other day.
Okay, so we did talk a little bit about some suggestions for the block schedule. So I'm going to go ahead, if it's okay, I'll go ahead and just add one thing to that. We talked a bit when I was there about pacing. A very good document to use for pacing would be the lesson overview compilation. It sounds a little counterintuitive, but it has a very nice it has a very nice chapter map. So if I'm looking at sort of a chapter at a glance and trying to sort of understand what are the key ideas, those lesson summaries will give you in bulleted points what are the key ideas for a lesson, and the last sentence of the lesson overview will give you the purpose for that lesson. So when I'm thinking about my pacing, I want to be coherent, of course, so I want to see how the purpose of this lesson and those key ideas now take my students into a more sophisticated grappling with those ideas in the following lesson. What is the purpose of the following lesson and the key ideas? And so I can see what are the key takeaways. As I'm delivering that lesson, I'm keeping that in mind to help me with my pacing so that I can get to the important parts in those 90 days. If that makes sense. Well, I'm going to pause to make sure that there are any questions.
I feel like I should share.
Every overview?
Is this in the lesson overview, the one that's called lesson overview?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll let you navigate to that. So I'm looking at, it's in the unit overview docs. It's the first teacher reference document. It's called the lesson overview compilation. And for example, I can see all of the chapters with questions and key concepts. And then if I keep scrolling down, I can see my entire unit like at a glance in summary form. So I'm looking at, for example, in lesson 1.3,
and then
students will pursue the possibility some things affecting molecules getting to at least in cells. Now, I noticed that my purpose statement is a little bit above that. So, okay, let me retract and say it's 95% of the time the last sentence.
I'll see it now.
But if it's not the last, it's like the second to the last or the last sentence. So here, the purpose of this lesson is to give students practice with an important aspect of argumentation, critiquing evidence. So I'm going to scroll down to my bullets, and I see here are the takeaways for my students for this lesson as they're thinking through the importance of critiquing evidence. So I'm going to pause so everyone can get a chance to look at that. See the purpose statement and those bullet points. That really will help with your pacing and focusing on the most important pieces of a lesson. And then you can give me the thumbs up when you're ready to move on.
Yeah, I know we weren't supposed to print, but I printed those out for every single unit, and I did one copy of the student notebook, so I could kind of go through and say, do I really want them to do this on the iPad, or do I want them to have it on paper? Because I would have never thought about doing those reasoning tools on paper until somebody pointed out the fact that you were able to jump back and forth. I was just saying that I printed out all these for every unit, just for the simple fact that I wanted to see what was more beneficial, to quickly look at that and say, okay, here they're going to use, like, for example, in the last module, or the last unit we just finished, they had a reasoning tool, and I printed out the student book, too, so I could look at it, because I like paper, too, even though I do like the iPads and digital. But, like, something that was brought up at our department leader meeting it's nice to use that reasoning tool on paper, because when the kids are typing their essay in Amplify, and then they did the digital reasoning tool, they're literally having to jump back to the digital. But if you print it all out and kind of have that in front of your face, then you're kind of like, oh, well, this would be nice. So I like having that lesson compilation just to be able to go through and say, okay, this might be something I want to print out. What does that look like in the student handbook? So that's what I've been using it for.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you find that helpful. Yeah, and that's another thing. Sometimes teachers will say, the students are feeling like, that we're always on the computer. You can always print out the activity. If you want to have some students, doing things paper, pencil, you always have that option. And I like the idea of the reasoning tool. Can be really helpful too. Sometimes it's just that tactile, paper, pencil. Here's my evidence. Here's my claim. They're connected like this, so that's my reasoning. Like, to help students with that abstract concept. Reasoning is a challenge. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the no time to use materials. I hope that I've given you some ways to think through pacing and contracting. What I would say is that if you are supplementing or adding things that are not or with the unit, try to see the coherence of how that fits in. That's just all I would encourage. Because we want our students, that it's been very carefully mapped out, the learning progression, and how you don't want to, for instance, give away the punchline. If what you're supplementing in Chapter 1, hands-on activity, for example, lets them know about cellular respiration and metabolism, then, they're kind of getting a little bit of the storyline jumbled.
I would just kind of urge you to think about that. All right, so I'm moving on to locked out of Amplify for a short time this week.
Can you give me a little more, was that this week or last week?
This is from Smithsburg.
Yeah, I guess it would have been this week.
Did it happen to you guys also?
What's that?
At Smithsburg Middle, were you locked out? Were you guys
Yeah,
locked
we were
out?
locked out. Yeah, momentarily we were locked out.
Yeah, it was.
We just got the oops sign.
When you say
It was-
locked out,
Okay,
I'd
well,
love to
and you're
learn more
saying-
about, is there a message, were you not able to log in,
No.
was it locked out because the network was down?
No, the network wasn't down. We didn't get a message, but it happened to myself and to the other seventh grade teacher because he called my room and wanted to know why we were
It's
locked
things
out.
that'll happen.
I
You
think
have
it
to
was
drop back and
glitchy.
punt. Like,
I know,
just,
we just,
okay,
yeah, we
guys, we're gonna
waited.
do this instead, and when we come back, I bet you everybody's
Yeah.
iPads will be up. Like,
And that's what I thought too. Like, it didn't bother me because I can do something else, like, recap what we did before, touch on something else, and then when it's back up and running again, then you get back into it. But it was short. It wasn't a long period of time.
I'm almost wondering too, like going back to what they were saying about stuff not loaded on the iPads. Like I've noticed for me that if I don't log if I don't physically turn off my computer and I come in on Monday morning and I try to get into Amplify, I might have to log in 3 or 4 times before it actually kicks in. But I'm thinking that's just the fact that the computer has been off the network or down for so long. And I noticed that it kind of times you out, so I'm almost wondering if that's the problem. People just need to do like a hard reset of their
Yeah,
iPad or their
fair.
computer.
Because on the weekends, if the kids take their iPads home on the weekends, then obviously, yeah, that's going to be an issue if they come back and they've had it on the whole weekend, it's barely charged. But we all got locked out, like it was everyone.
And it wasn't like a Monday.
But it was very glitchy. It was like,
brief.
it was very
back
brief.
up.
I didn't even know.
So the kid said, I can't get in, and
Yeah.
I went to mine and saw that I was kicked out too, and went back to the counter to say, okay, we're gonna do this instead. They were popping
They were
back
all
up.
popping back up.
And
so
I
it was
almost
short.
wondered too if they were having tech problems this week. Because going down, not to skip over some questions, it says a lot of us got the oops message. That happened to me, but I just hit refresh and then it worked. So I'm wondering maybe if they just had some tech trouble this week and maybe that's what part of it was.
Who knows? It doesn't really matter.
I'm sorry, was that an address to us or your team?
Just in general, I think like maybe it was just a hard time for the tech people this week because like one of the questions later down says a lot of teachers got the oops message, go back, and that happened to me several times this week. So I'm just thinking maybe it was just a hard week tech-wise because once you hit refresh, it was fine. So maybe people just need to troubleshoot their technology a little bit better.
Well, and a lot of the oops go back is them not closing things.
Oh.
Like they have so many things open at the top, it doesn't help.
It's not loading properly.
Right. But it's okay, we just go back and I say, hey, can you close the 10 browsers, 15 things open and then try to use Amplify. It works, but it's slower, so.
So that would be a best
So
practice.
yeah, I think everything that was mentioned in our little comment, our troubleshooting tip, and we definitely want to spend instructional time trying to get on. My hope is that you notice that things have been improving and not getting worse. If things are getting worse, definitely want to get closer to what actually happened and try to determine if it's a local issue, a bandwidth issue, or if it's really an Amplify, system issue. So this is why sometimes I'll ask, a lot of questions because we need to determine what the root cause is. So if we think there's a sentiment that things are getting better, then that makes me feel good. But if you think things are kind of, you mentioned tech being difficult this week, if you think progressively getting worse, then probably I should really touch base about trying to, figure out what is causing the lag or the oops messages, figure out what we can do to mitigate that.
I am going to, while we have just a moment here, we'll keep going. I do want to introduce to the two of you. You can't see her here, but recently joined us in the technology arm, and it's not just Amplify. I'm going to say this. I'm going to say it with no apologies. Amplify. I wish everybody was as responsive to our questioning and our issues as Amplify has been. My life would have been a whole lot easier because some other vendors I'm dealing with are not near as easy to work with. And Lisa has come on to really help all of us with all of the, as people like me who are content people, but I'm not necessarily a technology person. And so I'll just let you guys know, you'll be seeing Lisa Jones CC'd on most everything we do now, and she's going to be forever. She's going to be a big help to us.
Yeah, my main job is just to try and expedite when there are issues, and like when there was an outage, now I would come in and go, okay, where, when did it happen, and just make sure that we're clear on our end before we even bring it to you. And yeah, I do wish everyone was as responsive as you, because I have lots of other vendors who are not. So you guys are great.
Thank you for that. I'm excited to share that out. You're in good hands with Claudia too. I know Claudia's super responsive.
Uh-oh. Just as we say that.
Yeah, just as we say that, now we've lost connection with you. I don't know if you can still hear us.
No, it's slow. It's there. The audio has to catch up.
Right, the audio.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry about that. Just saying that the next question about scheduling concerns, I'm not understanding if that's something that that is kind of internal for your team because you were going to be coming together today.
I think I'm going to try to clear this up for everyone. There were new students and students switching classes at the beginning of the year, and then it was a few days till kids got switched into the correct class for Amplify. But now I think our next hurdle is going to be, we went back to look at students who may have been placed wrong. Kids we're seeing that are excelling and we need to bump them up, or kids that are, struggling and we need to move them to a different class. And so I know there's going to be some schedule changes coming up. And I'm hoping that this was just a clarification of, like, who do we need to let know? When do we need to let them know? How fast does that happen? So that, I'm going to say that's what
this is an issue that's on our end, not on Amplify's end. Because what I found happening in a number of schools is that a student schedule was changed, and they were changed in our student management system, Synergy, but they were changed to the teacher, but they weren't enrolled in the classes. And so it was someone at the school level that wasn't enrolling students in classes in Synergy for 2, 3, 5 days. And so if it doesn't get to Synergy, then it doesn't get to Clever, then it doesn't get to Amplify.
Gotcha.
If it gets in Synergy, it's in Amplify within 36 hours, usually less.
Yes, because we pull our rosters directly from our student information database, of course. So if the registrar, whoever doesn't roster them correctly into the right class, then it stays where they were.
And we're told that there's an interim period. We can't, like I had a kid come in last week, and he's still not in because they can't put him into Synergy until after the interim period. So he can't continue his Amplify from another middle school, and he's having to do it on paper pencil. I don't know if there's a way around that.
Let me ask. I don't know. That might be a question for you. They're saying that there's during the interim period, which we're in now, just before they get out interims, that they can't enter a new student into Synergy.
It's frozen?
Right, I
It
guess.
won't let them, yeah.
The registrar said that.
Our
Yeah.
school has talked about
I think
it.
that's happened before with kids moving classes and it just
How
happens.
about-
I
It's
can ask-
moving schools.
I can ask
Yeah.
Maggie.
How about if
can
we
do
move
something
on
about that.
while we have Claudia and Alestra, because this is an internal
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
It's definitely something we need to talk about and address, but it doesn't impact Claudia and Alestra, and I'll make a note and let's come back to that.
Yeah, because I'm fine with paper, and that's fine, but if we're doing a computer simulation, I can't do that on paper. So is there a way around that, if a student doesn't have access to the iPad and it's like a computer simulation, is there another way to get them access to that so they can, I don't even know how we would do it.
I guess you're just at the
Yeah, that's just to say the simulation. You could log in as yourself and let them do the sim
Mm-hmm.
and then log out from their computer.
Okay.
I do see that we have just about 10 minutes, and so I want to see if I can work my way through these remaining questions. The next one on very little hands-on, I'm going to, in a nutshell, say that the next generation science standards are really comprehensive, robust, and call for a shift in science education. So we want students to have opportunities to be engaging in the science and engineering practices, of which investigation is one of them. But there are many other practices that scientists and engineers engage with. We want them to have really robust opportunities to work through cross-cutting concepts and in more ways than just through hands-on activities. For example, reading in the ways or engaging with text in the ways that scientists do, or modeling. And sometimes modeling can be digital, it can be paper pencil. We get this question, and I understand teachers are used to having more labs, probably in their middle school science curriculum. And again, if you want to bring in something that you've done, so long as it's in the coherent structure of the learning progression, that's fine. But if we're going to spend the majority of our time doing hands-on investigations, then that's at the sacrifice of what? And so I ask teachers to think about this. You know, if we have a balanced, robust science curriculum, it's really going to engage all of the modalities and all of the dimensions. So I'm going to pause there because there might be pushback, but I do want to engage in a dialogue around this. So does anyone want to share out their thoughts, questions?
I just totally agree with what you're saying. Like, we have to, and I think as time goes on, again, going back to this is just our first year, once we roll out with this program, people can know what they can go through a little bit faster, what they can slow down with, and then, I want to do this. Like, for example, in 7th grade, we just did the microbiome, and there's no microscope stuff in there, and without doing, any disjustice to the rest of the lesson, I just integrated a couple of days worth of microscope stuff, and it worked beautiful, and we just moved on. So I think people just need to learn when it's appropriate to do stuff like that and enrich the Amplify curriculum whenever possible. But like you're saying, don't give away what's going to come in the rest of the unit. So be aware of what's coming up in the rest of the unit. But I totally agree. Like, it is a big shift. It's not just the kids do this cookie cutter lab. It's they have to do all the different practices.
Thank you for that. Yeah, so definitely hearing, and I love the idea of the microscopes with microbiome. It makes perfect sense. So thank you for sharing that. If there are any other questions or comments on that, I'm going to go ahead and skip over the oops because we have discussed about the oops and the pin. The content you're looking for was not found. Again, it's the same troubleshooting around, the oops. Navigating the gradebook is cumbersome. It is difficult and time-consuming to get to each student's work, and I understand that because you do have to click student by student the way that the gradebook is right now at this point in time. In working with middle school teachers in California, one school told me what they do because they want to quickly assess where their students are at if they create an exit slip. They might project something on Amplify and have their students do a written response just on a
half sheet of paper so they can quickly, just go through and kind of see who's where, sort those out. Do I need to do a reteach? Those kinds of things. But feel that it's cumbersome, thinking through what are some other ways that you can take a quick temperature check with your students, verbal, thumbs up, thumbs down, put in a vote, a really quick multiple choice. So I know that does take a little bit of your time to construct those things, but if you're feeling that you're just overwhelmed by looking through each student's grade book digitally, those are some of the workarounds I've heard other teachers use.
Well, and to piggyback off of what you're saying too, a lot of that stuff, if people actually look at the student notebook printout, if they just want to do, like, for example, the homework as their exit ticket, just print out the homework page. But I've also found it to be really helpful, like if I click on, like, my first student, I'll notice in the upper right-hand corner, there's, like, arrows to go down. So I can just very quickly, even if I don't want to grade it just then and there, I can click through the arrow button and just scroll down through the kids who have submitted and just see really quickly what their answers were to kind of get a vibe of whether they get it or not.
Yeah, thank you for that. Exactly. So, and maybe if you want to demonstrate that for your peers there, but yeah, just kind of going through your period and click down. It doesn't have to be, I was going to say, it doesn't have to be every single activity in a lesson. Maybe there's a particular activity you feel like really gives you a lot of insight. So thank you for sharing that.
Can I piggyback off her for just a second and the fact of the cumbersome part? We have found, maybe somebody else has found a solution for this, but we would like to put in the comment section when we give feedback to the students that maybe like an example of a good response. The problem is when the kids see it, it's scrunched down so small that they end up having to scroll down and it's a very small viewing area. Is there a way to make that viewing area bigger so they could get a bigger amount of feedback?
I haven't done the comment.
Are you the teacher comment when they get it in their My Work?
Well, yeah, when I go into grade, there's a comment button and then there's a grade button. And a lot of times I want to give some feedback there, but if I make it more than about 2 sentences, the kids can't see it all and they have to have this little bitty box to see it in and trying to scroll it down.
Oh, okay.
But this comes up.
Yeah, I don't think that there's anything for them to do other than what's available, like within, if there's like a Zoom, right, on the device, or I know I have seen students kind of use their fingers in the touch screens and kind of zoom in. So other than what's available, like within, like the device offers to view, I think there is no way within the platform to make that bigger.
Okay, yeah, I've gotten around it by putting an exemplar maybe on Google Classroom, but just not to have 2 platforms to put it on. I didn't know if there was a way around it.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, if you just send it,
and if they're not,
so if you send,
I
know that you all probably use the chat, but a good way, whenever you run into something, and I know when you're teaching at that moment, you may not have those extra couple of minutes, but it's always really, like if you're like on a lesson and you know this activity would work better this other way, or you kind of have a lesson learned, or for example, hey, this doesn't really help my student, and you can always give that feedback via the chat. And then they'll kind of create a ticket and put that under enhancements, and that'll be something that the team can look to do as a future enhancement. So we love to hear that kind of feedback from teachers, so don't hesitate to kind of send that forward. I think I'm understanding, I can confirm that that's not available now, but just for anything that you run into in the future as an enhancement, feel free to share that via the chat, and we can kind of formally document that requirement.
Okay, thank you.
And I see the next question is finding work to be used as a grade. And that is probably something that you can work through with your school site, your administrator. We have formative assessment opportunities, and so we really only have one summative assessment, which is the end of the unit assessment. And so I really feel like this is sort of a school issue or a district issue as to, what is it that we're going to be assigning grades to when the program is developed to be highly formative throughout until
Because you
just
can pick out, this is
assessment.
formative, this is your summative.
So, that said, the last question I think kind of goes back to a lot of the refresh and all of the troubleshooting with technology. We have 1 minute left, so if there are any burning questions out there.
I would like it, but I need help doing it. Well, Beth was
Any other questions?
Anybody? 1 minute.
And our last.
I think I'm good.
I
Last
think so too.
question?
I think we covered a lot.
No, we really appreciate your time, because we
Yeah,
have a lot of clarity now.
Yeah, but we're here.
That was a lot.
Yeah, it was a very productive hour and a half. I feel.
Yeah, really. Thank you so much. It was, we really were, I'm so happy we're able to get through all of these questions, and I really appreciate you folks, taking your time this evening to meet with us and to clarify, and I'm hoping that things are going really well with you and your units, and just excited to hear more. So please let us know any more questions that you have. You can always reach out to Bobby. Bobby will send them my way, and I'm happy to reach out.
Yes. Thank you.
Awesome,
Thank you
thanks so
very
much.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.
Well, no, I
Let
think,
me know if the validator fixes the eyes up, because again, across, I want to say the majority of our districts and schools are able to use eyes up, so I'm hoping the validator fixes that. I'd love to know, so let me keep you in the loop.
Okay, definitely.
Okay.
And I'll teachers here, let me know if it's working for you.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Bobby.
it just
Bye.
sounds like we have a lot that we can learn from one another.
Yeah.
It really does.
Like little tips and tricks that you're finding out.
You've got a good start. No, I just was trying to look into it. So we really covered, the only other thing was the.
Already got that part. Okay.